USPAP page 126, Advisory Opinion 22. The sequence and relationship of action steps required by SR 1-2 in a real property appraisal. The following table illustrates the sequence and relationship of the action steps leading to the appraiser's scope of work decision and the steps taken after that decision through to completion of the appraisal process. You start with client/users 1-2A. Then you go to intended use 1-2B. Then you go to type/definition of value 1-2C. And then you go to effective date 1-2D. From there, you go all the way around until you get to relevant characteristics 1-2E. Underneath that, after that, you're going to get to extraordinary assumptions 1-2F. From there, you go to hypothetical conditions 1-2G. From there, you go to scope of work 1-2H. Then from there, you go all the way around until you get to use 1-3. From there, and after that, you're going to go to analysis 1-4. After that, you go to listing/prior sales 1-5. And then you get to reconciliation 1-6. And then you finally go to reporting standard 2. It is important to recognize that the action of identifying the client and intended users, the intended use, the type and definition of value, and the effective date of value, SR 1-2A through D, affects the appraiser's decisions as to the subject's relevant characteristics, the scope of work, and the extraordinary assumptions or hypothetical conditions, SR 1-2E through H. The appraiser's decisions about the last 4 elements to be identified follow from and must be consistent with factual information identified in the first 4 elements shown in the table. The sequence illustrated in the table requires the appraiser to begin the decision-making process in the early stages of an assignment. It also means the appraiser has a burden of proof for conclusions about which property characteristics are relevant and which are not. Sequence and relationship of action steps required by SR 1-2 in a real property appraisal. Competency and the scope of work decision. Accomplishing the first 4 action steps, SR 1-2A through D, illustrated in the table, provides the basis for deciding which of the property's characteristics are relevant in the assignment. This information, together with the appraiser's competency, knowledge, and expertise in appraising the specific type of property involved, permits the appraiser to determine whether any extraordinary assumptions or hypothetical conditions are necessary to complete the assignment and to make a reasonable and supportable scope of work decision. It is important to note here that the appraiser's competency in performing similar assignments is a key factor in the scope of work decision. Without competency, the appraiser is not prepared to correctly interpret the information Page 127. Advisory Opinion 22 continued. Gathered in response to SR 1-2A through E, or to make well-reasoned decisions based on that information in response to the requirements set forth in SR 1-2F through H. Moreover, without competency, the appraiser is not aware of or capable of understanding how the information gathered in compliance with SR 1-2A through E and the conclusions formed in compliance with SR 1-2F and G affect the decision about which of the analysis steps set forth in Standards Rules 1 through 3 and 1 through 4 are necessary in an assignment. Understanding which analysis, methods, and techniques are necessary and what data are necessary to correctly complete the analysis is an integral part of the scope of work decision. This decision cannot be made competently without understanding how the conditions in a market value definition work together with the other factors identified in compliance with Standards Rule 1-2 to determine what kind of data are relevant and which types of analysis are applicable and necessary in the assignment. General comment on market value definitions. Market value appraisals are distinct from appraisals using other types of value because market value appraisals are based on a market perspective and on a normal or typical premise. These criteria are illustrated in the following definition of market value, provided here only as an example. Market value means the most probable price which a property should bring in a competitive and open market under all conditions requisite to a fair sale. The buyer and seller each acting prudently and knowledgeably, and assuming the price is not affected by undue stimulus. Implicit in this definition are the consummation of a sale as of a specified date and the passing of title from seller to buyer under conditions whereby: number 1, buyer and seller are typically motivated. 2, both parties are well informed or well advised and acting in what they consider their own best interests. Number 3, a reasonable time is allowed for exposure in the open market. Number 4, payment is made in terms of cash in US dollars or in terms of financial arrangements comparable thereto. And number 5, the price represents the normal consideration for the property sold unaffected by special or creative financing or sales concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale. The market perspective replaces a user's, for instance, buyer, seller, lender, agent, etc., perspective that might apply in other appraisals, such as for investment value or insurable value. This market perspective directly affects the scope of work necessary to develop credible opinions and conclusions in market value appraisals. The public's expectation that a market value appraisal reflects only the perspective of the marketplace and is not affected by such other criteria as an intended user's objectives is important. Meeting this expectation serves to foster and promote public trust in professional appraisal practice. A fundamental purpose of the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice and one that applies to all work performed under USPAP. A market value appraisal is also based on whatever the normal or typical conditions are in the marketplace for the property appraised in a time frame that is consistent with the date of value in the appraisal. In the definition of value used in an appraisal contains criteria that are different from those that are, that are normal or typical. The use of the term market value alone to characterize the assignment result is not appropriate. For example, a value opinion developed to reflect the most probable price in a sale under forced conditions is a forced sale value and not consistent with the normal or typical premise to be reflected in a market value appraisal. Importance of identifying the specific definition of market value. The definition of the value to be developed in an appraisal establishes specific conditions. These conditions impose parameters on the appraisal assignment that are necessary to ensure that the results of the assignment are meaningful in the context of that definition of value. There are many definitions of value, some of which are market value definitions. Other definitions of value appear to be related to market value, but are not called market value. For example, it is a common practice in appraisals for intended use in employee relocation assignments to use a value definition based on anticipated sales price rather than market value. The anticipated sales price definition contains very specific marketing, property condition, and terms of sale requirements that replace normal or typical market conditions. Thus, while the development process